But what something I noticed online the other day when I was looking around to see what's out there is this article popped up, and it was just on my Google feed. When I go to Google, there are those first things that populate before you even search. Usually it's like Joe Rogan stuff, Tesla, tech, Apple, something, but there was an article and it said that in January there might be like a ton of evictions because of the coronavirus. And so I know in LA there was a moratorium on evictions. I think the first one was back in March or April, and then I think it got extended again in June. But then I think September 1 they changed it. I think September 1 they changed it so that come October 1, tenants had to pay like 25% rent for the rest of the time. Because before, all they had to do was basically, if I'm stating this correctly, I've read into it, not because I was worried about getting evicted, but I was just curious. So I think all you had to do was like send a letter to to your landlord within like 7 days of when the rent was due, and you could just you just had to explain that the hardship because of the virus and whether or not you lost your job or got laid off or whatever, and then you still owed that money, but you could literally just stay there and you didn't have to pay anything. So I think that was basically going from March through the end of September. But then October 1 they instituted that new change where you had to pay a quarter of it. But basically what I was curious about was because I figured, as much as I've been thinking about leaving Los Angeles or maybe even California, if there's going to be a ton of units on the market come January or whenever, that might be a good time to get into a place for a good price. But basically what I found after searching around for a little bit was it's tough to say when exactly all those evictions are going to take place, because number one, once landlords have the right to start kicking people out here in LA especially, they're going to en masse. And then there's going to be a ton of basically a ton of evictions going into the system, and who knows how long that's going to take for the government to sort through. I mean, anytime anyone has ever been to any sort of city building for tax issues, or even the post office, city hall, we all know how disorganized those places are. I mean, it takes forever for the simplest things to get pushed through. There's always issues, there's always problems with your paperwork, there's always little things you did wrong, you have to start over, and that stuff takes time. So I don't know if January 1, actually what I read, I think it said that the moratorium is gonna go through January, so I guess it would be February 1. But yeah, I mean, if there's thousands and thousands of evictions going through, it's basically going to bottleneck into a few city employees at each city hall or building, wherever. I don't know where those happen, but I have a feeling it's going to be backed up for a long time. And so because even before COVID-19 came into our lives, evictions in LA took a long time. I mean, I worked for a property management company for almost 4 years, and thankfully I never had to deal with one personally as a manager, but they take a long time. You have to give people like 60 days notice, and then from that point, I think there was even like another maybe 3 months, and so people could really push it. And if they were able to come up with the money during that time, as long as they paid it, they could push it right to the very end. They could pay rent, and then there's nothing the landlord could do. They'd stay there. So I don't really know, but another thing I came across, and this was a nationwide CDC order that went out in September 4th, which basically, I'm not an expert, but the way I understood it, and I watched a few videos on it and read some articles, and I'll post them in the description, was basically this article said that the CDC was going to put like their own moratorium on evictions nationwide, because there were 7 or 8 points that you had to satisfy. I don't know if you had to satisfy all of them, but I think so. But it was basically because if people are getting tossed out, and if people are being evicted, and that puts them into a situation where they're either more susceptible to contract the coronavirus, or where it might it might be a situation where, for instance, if they have to go into like a homeless shelter, or if they have to move in with a bunch of other people, that could accelerate the spread, or it could it could make them more vulnerable to contracting COVID, spreading it, and things like that. And so as a result, that's the CDC order basically says, hey, if you're going to get evicted, and and these conditions apply. And again, I'll put the form in the description. Give me a second. There were 7 or 8 points. Actually, I think I still have it. I'm going to pull it up right now. But basically what it said was, if these apply to you, you can print out this form, fill it out, submit it to your landlord. And again, I think you had to do this within 7 days of when your rent is due. So if I was playing it safe, I would, I'd say get it in before the 7th. There's a grace period with most places, I know. Usually it's like 3 or 5 days, but I wouldn't press my luck if I were you, even though depending on where you live, the laws might be more on your side than on your landlord's side. But again, if it gets right down to it, I think most people, if they find themselves in these situations, they want to do everything they can to sort of, they need every advantage they can get. And so, but yeah, let me pull it up. Basically, you could submit that, and that would, so the articles I read, there was some dispute as to whether or not that order, that nationwide order, would supersede like a local mandate, like here in LA. I think it's tough, to be honest. I think if you're in a city like LA that's very progressive and left-leaning, that you probably could use, not use, but you probably could that would probably apply to you if you submitted that as as a reason for hardship or something. I think here the courts, if it got to the courts, they would probably be inclined to side with you as opposed to the landlord. But yeah, let me pull this up real quick, and I'll read these to you. And again, this was kind of interesting to me. I didn't even know about the nationwide one, but so there was 7 points. I don't know, it says expires 12/31/2020, but I read something online that this was gonna be good through January 2021. I'll double check that, and again, if I find something, I'll put it in the description. But okay, so here are the 8. Basically you have to say, I've tried everything I can as far as government programs or local programs to help people in need during COVID. The way they word it, I've used best efforts to obtain all available government assistance for rent or housing. It says I expect to earn no more than $99,000. So, was not required to report income in 2019 to the IRS, or I received an economic impact payment check pursuant to the CARES Act. I don't know. I think that was that stimulus check they sent out, but I'm not sure. It says in parentheses stimulus check, so I'm assuming that's what it is. So you went to all these programs, you still don't have rent. You don't expect to earn $100,000 this year. If you do, if you expect to earn more than 99, apparently you can't use this as an excuse for not being able to pay your rent. Point number 3 just says outright, I'm unable to pay my rent in full due to, I lost my job, I was laid off, etc. Medical expenses. I don't know, you might be able to, if you had to, God forbid, if you had to pay for a funeral, or, if you had someone in the hospital and, you were paying the bills, this might apply to you. I'm not sure, you'll have to look into it. Point number 4 says, I'm using best efforts to make timely partial payments. So basically, hey, I'm trying to pay rent, I have $100 or $250 or $800 or whatever, I'm trying to pay it. The form is basically, when you sign this form, you're basically saying, yes, I've done all these apply to me. So that was point 4. Point 5, I think this is the big one, point number 5. It says, if evicted, I would likely become homeless, need to move into a homeless shelter, or need to move into a new residence shared by other people who live in close quarters because I have no other available housing options. So I think if you could move back home with your mom and dad, this might not apply to you. But I think this is the big one, because, if you have to move, for one, if it would make you homeless, 2, if you'd have to move into a shelter, or really any place, like I said, where you're living in close quarters with a lot of people, that's like ideal breeding ground for this virus. So I think would be the main one. If that would happen to you, I think this is, this would be a good way to not be evicted, because they certainly don't want, they're trying to get control of this virus any way they can. You can argue about the ways they've gone about doing it, but so that's point number 5. Point number 6 is where you acknowledge that even though you can't pay, if you haven't been paying, or if you're not going to be able to pay, or all the above, that you understand that rent is still due. So you're still going to owe the money even if you can't pay it right now. Yeah, it seems that one's tough, because it's like, what does it matter? It's not like anyone's doing you a favor by putting you in debt. Honestly, it almost seems like it might be better to just move out. And obviously not if you're going to be living on the street, but man, if you have any other options, I just don't see how it's a benefit. Yeah, not getting kicked out, sure. Of course you don't want to get kicked out, but depending on how much your rent is and how long you've not been paying it, or if the next few months you're not going to be able to, depending on how much money that's going to be, that could be a huge debt, and I don't know what else your landlord would be legally entitled to come after you for. I don't know if they're, there's all kinds of sneaky, dirty stuff, interest, and just the way when you sue someone, you can sue for pain and distress and punitive damages and all that stuff. There's probably stuff like that for landlords too. It might be something to keep in mind. At least that's how I see it. I would hate to just, like, it's kind of like, well, pay later. Like, that's rarely a good idea. I think it's pretty common knowledge at this point. Like, going into debt is it's hardly ever a good idea. Right now, if that's your only option, I get it. But yeah, point number 6 is basically saying, no matter what, like, I still owe this money even though I can't pay right now. And then point number 7, it says, I further understand that at the end of this temporary halt on evictions on December 31, 2020, so I don't know if this is an old form or if January 1 really is going to be, when it's all over. Point 7 says, when this is all over, my housing provider may require payment in full for all payments not made prior to and during the temporary halt, and failure to pay may make me subject to eviction pursuant to state and local laws. So again, I'll post this, but this is from the CDC. This is the nationwide one, and some of the other stuff I mentioned applied to Los Angeles, LA County, and I think maybe some parts of California, like but paying 1/4 of rent and all that, I think that was mainly LA County. But so this was just something I came across that I thought might be useful, for people who are either worried that they might be evicted or haven't been paying their rent, or I didn't see much. I saw some news articles, and even on YouTube, I didn't see any videos. Again, this is not like, I'm reading from articles here and from documents that are on the CDC website, but I could be wrong. So if there's something in this video that just look into it. If you're gonna, don't take my word for it, but I'll post the articles that I read, and so I don't know. I guess it might be a while. I mean, based on reading this and knowing how long government entities take to just get stuff done, there's so many inefficiencies. There are so many, and honestly, sometimes it's just incompetence, and lazy, apathetic people working for these municipalities, for the city, for the state. I mean, it might be middle of 2021, or even maybe like going into the 4th quarter, late 3rd quarter, August, September, October, before there's this wave of evictions that this article was referring to. I don't know, but I'll definitely keep my ear to the ground. And that's it for this one, guys, and let me know if you find anything else out. All right, have a good one.